sailing to Tahiti? We have 3 local sailors sharing their story in this episode of Pacifica Currents. Edie Hovermale, host of Pacifica Currents. Tonight's show is on a sailing trip to Tahiti. I'd like to welcome our guests, Ryan, also known as Boz Johnson. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you.
And Dane, also known as Bucky Johnson. Welcome,
Thank you,
Dane.
Edie.
And John Harrison. Welcome.
Thank you.
Now, you had a long trip, so I'd love to hear about each of you first and how you're local in Pacifica here. Give us a little information.
Well, yeah, my name is Ryan Johnson. I'm mostly known as Boz. I'm 25, born and raised in Pacifica. Went to Sharp Park Alternative, Terra Nova High School, Skyline College, College San Mateo, and I'm currently in University of California, Davis. And yeah, just born and raised, homegrown Pacifican.
Great. Dane?
I'm 31 years old, born and bred Pacifican, Terra Nova High School, Sharp Park Elementary. Went to UC Santa Cruz and started living on a boat, sowing the seeds of this journey. Rabble-rousing with this guy since we were first grade.
My name is John Harrison. You can pretty much ditto most of what these guys said. Went to Sharp Park Alternative, Terra Nova, Skyline College, UC Santa Cruz, and a few places after that, and hitting the 3.0 in a couple months here.
So, Dane, what made you think of Tahiti? What was the Tahiti?
Palm trees.
Palm trees, okay.
A masochistic desire to work on the boat in someplace hotter with more bugs. Isn't Tahiti just an idyllic destination that you always see in pictures and read about? And it seemed like a real adventure to actually cross an ocean instead of just doing a more local cruise kind of along a coastline without the proximity of safe harbor.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the Caribbean's a little bit too popular as well.
And expensive.
Yeah.
Tahiti turned out to be worse.
But it's just more removed, and because of that, we always had the fantasy of going to just these random islands and just kind of running around wild, as free as possible. So,
I mean, how did Dane talk you into it?
Actually, I don't think he really had to, because I think it was in 2003. The 3 of us went on a little sailing trip on my brother's old boat, and we went to the Farallon Islands off of San Francisco, and it was kind of like, my brother was stewing with the idea of just sailing anywhere and somewhere far, and I kind of went along as a test to see whether or not I'd be into sailing, and it ended up that I had a really good time, even though we had an interesting experience at the Farallons itself. We had a great time all in all, and I hopped on board after that. So,
okay.
I tend to be somebody who's up for most things, and Buck and I, have gone on a number of adventures together. We started backpacking when we were like 13. I'm pretty much, if somebody's like, hey, you want to go do this, I pretty much do. And I had taken a sailing class when I was at UC Santa Cruz, overlapping with him. I liked it, and we went to the Farallons, and I thought I was going to die, and then I realized I wasn't going to, and that was pretty good. And it was the ocean's got an allure, right? And it's a big percentage of the planet that we don't get to spend any time on.
So for this whole adventure, including all the prep time, you guys did a lot of filming. So we have a lot of video to share with our viewers. What was the first thing you needed to do?
The first thing you do is you raise the sails, and then take a look at that list and put the sails back down and get to work, because we had probably 3 or 4 pages of items on a list to do. As Our departure date loomed a month and a half off.
I think we might have had a list of lists at one point.
Yeah.
Yeah, we made a list of lists that we needed to make.
It's just never ending.
One of the biggest items was rebuilding the motor, which...
what year that motor is?
Damn it, John.
1980 or so.
Where were you?
But it definitely needed a rebuild. It was supposedly rebuilt, but it didn't work like a rebuilt motor. And I took about a month on the floor of the boat there while I was living in it, with about 1,000 other projects going on around simultaneously.
Did you have any prior engine building experience?
No, you learn
just
manuals and you learn by doing. And it sure was a nice feeling to have this start up.
Yeah, my brother's kind of...
And the motor was finally going.
Uncertified engineer at this point.
That's what they call sailors. It's either crazy or engineers without degrees.
Right.
We took a ham certification class because we had a ham radio that we installed as one of those projects, which never ended up quite working. We never got that one done. That was on the delayed
We thought
list.
we were done.
We thought it worked.
And then we just turned it on and nothing happened.
And nothing happened, and we were out of time. So we just left.
Had to install the stove and the propane system that went with it.
Mm-hmm.
Refrigerator. It's a long list of stuff.
Winches rebuilt.
Oh yeah, we rebuilt the winches.
Batteries worked on, topped off.
Yeah, it's ultimately...
Food
it's
list,
stuff
gear
that you
list,
never
parts
finish.
to order. Yeah,
Just
never
go.
finish.
Take out 5 years worth of stuff. Put back what you absolutely need.
Yeah.
Find a place for all the food and all the water. Oh, there's plumbing. Ton of plumbing. Carpentry.
And finally, as we were getting down to the bottom of that list, we had a going away party, a bon voyage party.
We didn't
And,
break any bottles on it though. We were afraid we'd knock a hole in the hull.
Break
so.
something. No, she's a stout boat, a skookum.
Like you said, your radio didn't work. How did you
Well-
call for help if you needed it?
We had a VHF radio, which is a line of sight radio. A ham radio is a longer distance. You can use it to reach the United States, for instance, from the middle of the ocean. But we had a VHF, which was good for line of sight if we saw any other ships, which we barely did. Then we also had EPIRBs, which are emergency response beacons, and you basically flip a switch and everyone knows that you're in trouble, hypothetically.
So you hop in your life raft, flip the switch, and hang on and pray for pray for
Someone to hear your cries.
So were your parents worried? Were they concerned?
Yeah, I mean...
You'd have to ask them about that, but I would say yes.
I know that they were a little bit worried, except that they had quite a few years to get used to the idea because, my brother bought the boat 5-6 years ago, and we've been talking about doing this forever and had many false starts along the way. And as I waited I was going to school at the time while John and my brother Dane sailed to French Polynesia. And while they were in the crossing, I was in school and I was talking to my mom, and she's like, "Yeah, I'm not too worried about them. I got a good feeling." So she was feeling at home with it.
Although she was the source of the quote, "The sea doesn't care about you," which turns out to be true, but
Very true.
not necessarily. It neither does it want to kill you, right?
So after shipping off from Morro Bay with a functional stove and no cell phone service, we set out in the ocean and started settling into our new life at sea, which would be our home for the next 24 days.
Basically spend all day cooking, right?
I spent all day reading and sleeping and bumping around the cabin.
Yeah, because you were pretty sick at that time?
I was sick at that time, yeah. I discovered that I had the flu about a day off at the coast.
He sounded like he was dying for the first week.
Spent the next week and a half hacking a lung up every time I had to go up and, change sail or reef or whatever, and then falling back into my cot.
Turns out to be a pretty effective diet, though.
Yeah,
Being
I
sick
slimmed
at
down
sea.
quite a bit. I slimmed down quite a bit.
Having to hang on to everything when the boat rocks and rolls.
Yeah.
So about a week into the trip, things were starting to warm up, and John's cough was disintegrating a bit, and we started actually getting the first little whispers of the tropics.
Yeah, it was the routine was hard to settle into. You know, you got to keep watch at night, or you're supposed to keep watch at night, and so you sleep and cook and do everything else. You know, where you can find it. And pretty much the only thing you never miss is sunset, in my experience. That's about the most comfortable time of the day, and also it's something you don't want to miss. You know, you get pretty used to spending a lot of time looking at the horizon and getting a kick out of what's different about it, but you're kind of bored of it too about 2 in the afternoon when you've been staring at it for the last 8 hours.
So you filled your days with books and conversation?
And music.
And we would have movie night once in a while when our very meager battery supply would allow. The first 12 days we were out there with an autopilot, an electric autopilot running. We actually have a wind vane, which is a wind and wave driven or water current driven autopilot. It doesn't take power. It's an amazing little thing.
It's great.
But we didn't quite get that dialed in the beginning. So we had this electric autopilot steering for 12 days before it finally broke. And then we made the other one work the way we should have the first day out, and wondered why we had put up with all that racket the first 2 weeks almost.
You know, but you pass time, you know, making special little things and projects. Like I had my 29th birthday out there, and he got me a fan that worked, which was pretty exciting.
One of the major oversights leaving is didn't make sure all the fans worked.
I spent the rest of the trip basically underneath that fan with a book. So
and I took over that fan when I
it's clutch.
As we moved into the doldrums, we needed a fan really bad, and the wind kind of died off, and we sat there just fixing sails and sweating and reading books.
And once you get to this point, your only outfit is shorts all day, all night. That's all you need.
I broke my finger the first day out, I might mention. That was kind of a bummer. So I have a duct tape splint on through a lot of the video that we took.
Are those dolphins?
Yeah, seeing dolphins was pretty exciting because at that point
out in the middle,
another mammal for quite a while other than each other, and it was like you actually felt the real affinity for something other than a seabird. It was kind of funny, or a flying fish that was dead on deck. A lot of company there.
Yeah, every morning there's flying fish all over the deck, and they sense the boat coming in the dark and think we might be a predator and jump out, but they land on our deck, and it doesn't turn out so well. Apparently you can. We did not.
We just did fish patrol. Whoever got up in the morning first was part of your job was to walk the
overboard,
find whatever was there, and then occasionally at 2 or 3 in the morning you'd hear some poor sorry fish up on deck flip, and if you were awakened enough by it, then you might go rescue the poor thing. But.
So we had some squalls and some rougher periods, but there's lots of beautiful sunny days. No real storms of much note. I mean, 10, 12-foot seas is about the biggest we saw. Winds maybe 30 knots, 35 tops in a squall, but usually beautiful 10 to 16 knots of wind.
And so what 30 knots is like the equivalent of about
35 miles an hour?
Okay. Did you plan the timing of it to make sure you were in a good season?
Yeah, we left it, was pretty much the typical time to leave. You leave in the northern hemisphere springtime, and then you get there when it's winter in the southern hemisphere.
Right, because in order to avoid hurricanes. Because if you were to leave in July, August, September, then you have to worry about hurricanes tracking across the Pacific from like Mexico towards Hawaii and stuff like that.
Okay. So what kind of things did you eat? I saw some of the delicacies.
Well, that was actually
yes.
secret of mile. We made burritos, and those consisted of beans out of a can, rice out of a bag, chicken out of a can,
Florida Cana rum. Oh wait, we didn't eat that. I drank that.
And then some corn,
and then threw it over.
And tortillas that had managed to survive the the thing. But it's actually, you know, you get it takes enough work to make anything that by the time it's done, you're pretty excited about it if you got any appetite at all.
Yeah.
So what do you mean it takes a lot of work?
Well,
Explain
just
that.
because the whole boat is rocking to the extent, and
You have to
sometimes it's
hang
just on a
on
heel
all the
nonstop.
time with one hand.
Or there's a strap that you can
Okay.
run around your back and tie in.
Lean
so you
against,
actually lean
yeah.
into it while you cook. And the stove is gimbaled, and so you're following that around when you're trying to stir.
Or when you go to retrieve cans from the lower cabinet and they fall onto your hand. And
There's that. And then if you want to turn around and do something like cut something on another surface, there's sort of a dance you have to do in order not to clip yourself too dramatically.
So where are we
Shuffle.
here? What's this?
So after 24 long days, we arrived in the Marquesas. These are the first set of islands from our direction in the French Polynesia archipelago.
I'm going with that.
There's three main groups that are all different in character, and these are the Marquesas. They look a lot like Hawaii, and there's really beautiful, verdant fruit growing all over the place. We were excited to be here. John, I was looking at an old chart that I had that had the chief's house on it, and as I was approaching, I said, as we were approaching the island that night before, I said, "Oh look, it's got the chief's house," and he thought I said cheese house. And he said, "There's a cheese house?"
But you know, it's a French colony, and I'm thinking, man,
We're
I've
dreaming
had
of cheese
for-
and all kinds of
for,
wonderful
you know,
delicacies.
3.5 weeks, and I'm ready for some brie, which it turned out we were able to get, but
Yeah.
there was no cheese house per se.
Yeah, so we got some good
That's
food
great.
though, and went out to stretch our legs around the island and enjoy some of the local splendor.
Yeah. Banana trees and all kinds of food growing around, and just you know, tropical jungle. Lots of interesting, you know, birds and things like that. The birds are a little
Yeah.
bit different there because there's no natural predators for them, and so they fly a little different, and they're not timid like birds here might be, other than, like, you know, say a seagull. Not all fun and games though. You got to anchor.
Yeah, moving the boat
Anchoring
from place to
process.
place can be a lot of work. You have to haul up 140 feet of anchor chain plus a 45-pound anchor on the end of it, pretty much by hand, and then
Get you some forearms like that.
Popeye forearms. Yep. But it's worth it.
Absolutely.
Motoring and sailing between islands in the Marquesas. The water was clear and mellow, and dolphins came and joined us. We pulled into an anchorage overnight and waited before going into the main village of Atuona. Village. It's a city. Small one.
Yeah, wouldn't be a city here, but
No.
there it's a city.
It's a big deal there.
I mean, the entire population of the Marquesan set of islands is about 5,000, right?
Yeah, what is
Gauguin is buried on this one.
So we went shopping and stocked the boat up with about as much stuff as we thought we would need for our upcoming week-long passage to the Tuamotus.
Mostly cheese and baguettes and chocolate, I think.
Lots of cheese.
Whenever you hit a store, you definitely got some ice cream. It's hot.
And Coca-Cola.
Ice cream and Coca-Cola. It's funny what we end up exporting that you know, you get across
We found a
the world and
Safeway
you want,
Select
but-
Cola for sale in the
That's
store.
right.
We thought
There's a
that
lot
was...
of Safeway stuff. Yeah.
And that was
Yeah.
one with no airport either, so it was brought there by boat somehow. Probably from Samoa. That's my theory. Anyway.
And we set out to the Tuamotus, which are all coral, low-lying atolls with beautiful lagoons in the middle and with some fresh bananas that some of the locals had given us. And what we thought was to be a 4 or 5 day trip ended up being 6 or 7.
I think we thought it was going to be 3 days. It was like 400 miles.
Yeah,
It was
somebody
gonna
said it
be
would be
3
3 days, but they probably had a big old boat. We didn't even
Yeah.
pay attention.
We didn't
but-
do the math until we left the
Yeah.
island. It was like, ooh, it's be a little longer than we thought.
And we kind of ran out of wind and started motoring to make the last leg into on the 6th day to make it before sunset into our destination so we could spend the night ashore or in an anchorage. But the carburetor was malfunctioning on the motor, and that took some rebuilding. We enjoyed the last couple of delicacies we had on board, like pamplemousse, which is
It's like a sweet grapefruit.
it's delicious.
It's about as big as your head. And
ever. I would eat it every day if we had it.
Yeah.
Y'all are missing out.
You guys don't know how to live until you've had some pamplemousse.
Yeah.
pamplemousse juice.
And finally, after spending last night bobbing around out there, we were able to motor in through the Chaputa Pass into the inside of Rangiroa Lagoon. And John got to enjoy some wonderfully clear water.
Yeah, and
And some
Rangiroa
real
is known for
snorkeling.
its diving and there's some great snorkeling as well.
And that was pretty much the end of my trip, except for a short interlude in Tahiti where I got stuck because of a fireman's strike. But that's another story for another show.
And
Next
then that's when I
installment.
took over. And I became the second person on the boat with my brother.
Yeah.
So you never
Picked him up
crossed?
at the airport.
No,
John and
I
Buzz, you
never
never
saw
crossed?
John the entire time.
I had a lonely week
Oh, Sita.
to clean up the boat.
Okay.
Yeah, we
And
had a lot of...
Boz showed up in time for a solar eclipse.
Yeah, it was beautiful solar eclipse too. It's not like in the movies how it's only, 10, 30 seconds or whatever. It lasts like a long time. You kind of get sick of it after a while. You're like, yeah, okay, it's eclipse.
Yeah.
It's like 30 minutes. You're like, all right, I'm cool.
Almost a complete eclipse too.
Uh-huh.
It was
Was it during the day, too?
96%, I think, during the day. Yeah.
So it like really got dark.
Yeah, it was spooky out. It was great. And the people there are really great. We were all really impressed with
The kids were
just
always
how
trying
good
to sink our
natured.
dinghy.
Yeah, the kids love playing in the dinghies when you put them there. You got to kind of keep an eye on it and sometimes shoo them away a little bit if they get too crazy. But we fell in with a bunch of really great guys there. There's one in particular, Benoit,
Yeah. Meeting him is a story in itself. We actually ended
right
up
there
hanging
on
out
the
with him for like a
left
month.
with the mirror.
It was about a month that we were with him.
Yeah,
Or
we
was
were
it
going to
maybe
leave and
five-
then stayed another week and another week and another week. And these people, we partied with them and got dancing lessons and drank Hinano, the local beer, and went to an all-exclusive Tahitian-only beach party
Oh, that's great.
where they said, don't say you're French.
Yeah.
If they think you're French, they'll beat you up.
Yeah, because we got welcomed in because we're American,
They-
and the Tahitians, they love Americans, and Americans aren't that, it's not that often that they come there, so, and, some Tahitians have a little ill sentiment towards French people because it's, and
Even if their economy depends on...
because we're American, we got, free ticket, and we just got welcomed in, and,
Yeah.
and Benoit took us everywhere.
That's great.
And Rangiroa is one of the greatest scuba diving sites on the planet from what I've read, and I, from my limited experience, cannot argue. I took the opportunity to get certified while I was waiting for Boz to show up, and took a lot of amazing dives. And
Kind of got addicted
The
to
people
it. You
at-
kept going even after I showed up.
I know, I kept going. Yeah, the people at the dive shop were great.
Yeah.
Paradive right there on the corner. Like, they were wonderful, and just started.
Hanging out with them like
It
every
was
day.
dreamy. All kinds of cool sea life, Eels that aren't on the menu there because they concentrate the ciguatara toxin in the reef system, so they're poisonous to eat. They're almost like puppy dogs, but they'll bite.
You don't want to pet them.
Got to swim with dolphins.
And you swim with them in the wild? They're wild dolphins?
Yeah, I believe those are bottlenose.
They weren't too interested in us. They just kind of took a little pass to check us out and then went on their way.
Not trying to do tricks for you.
Yeah, but there's all kinds of amazing life out there around the boat. Manta rays swimming by every couple days.
Yeah, like 8 feet across.
Mm-hmm.
Big suckers. I tried diving in after them, they just swim away.
It's a pretty beautiful, beautiful life just living out there on a boat,
And
anchored out.
in order to do your laundry, you do your laundry in the ocean, including backpacks that have cat urine on them.
That's how you do your
Watch where you throw your bag when you hit your ride.
Why did they have cat
I hitched a ride in a truck and with a bunch of food in my backpack, and apparently there's some type of urine mutates in those cats. So.
Oh, man.
Riding around in Ben-in-law's boat was always good for a thrill. Doing 35 miles an hour across the lagoon in the dark of night with no running lights.
We get launched in the air quite a lot.
Hold on tight. But eventually it was time to move on. We weighed anchor and headed out on a passage to Tahiti. 200 miles to go.
Approximately a day and a half of sail. With wind, assuming. In this particular instance, we actually had strong wind the whole time. What was it, like 18 knots the entire time?
Yeah, I think so.
Pretty consistent too. So our boat was going about 7 on average, which is about 9 miles per hour or so.
Yeah.
And we made good time. We actually arrived a little early. We had to stay, heave to and still the boat outside of the island of Tahiti and wait until morning. So
essentially you park and you only drift a little bit overnight. Yeah. And
so there's rules on coming into port.
It's always a good idea to come in the daytime.
So you don't hit coral reefs.
Especially if it's unfamiliar and there's coral reefs and very foreign territory to us. So it was, there's no rule that says you can't, but it was prudent to wait until you can see.
Especially in unfamiliar places.
Mm-hmm. And a close beat to windward into Tahiti. Got the decks nice and wet. But finally, Tahiti was right there. After all those years of dreaming.
Yeah, we stayed at a little, the Tahiti Yacht Club. And from there there was a big supermarket that we could restock, and we met up with our friend Jerry, who was another cruiser sailor. He had sailed from Mexico and was solo sailing at the time. And so we hung out with him and
rented a car,
cool road trips. Saw like all of the island, Tahiti, and its smaller island, Tahiti, and went to some really cool waterfalls. The same waterfalls, I believe, that Captain Cook's men used to swim at.
Mm-hmm. It had a great pool, actually.
A popular swimming spot.
Kind of cold, but
that must have been fun to be there with history.
Knowing
that.
Yeah. We went to
that
Cook's
place
Bay
has a lot of history behind it.
Yeah, it's good heading. I think we can stay there.
But like all good things, this one had to end, and we had to move on. And I was scheduled to catch a flight in a couple weeks, so go back to work and try and replenish the bank account a little bit, or the cruising kitty, as cruisers call it. Not me, but cruisers call it. And we sailed another 120 miles to the beautiful island of Raiatea. By far the most beautiful all-around place
Luscious
that we went
jungle.
to.
It's gorgeous.
Mm-hmm. Hauled the boat out, put it in a boatyard.
And it's there to this till
for
this
some
day.
much-needed maintenance and cleaning. Yeah, and to this day.
So I want to ask each of you, what was your high point and your low point of the trip? I know you each had different segments. Well, you were through the whole thing, Dane, but I'd like to hear each of you.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I would say that the most pleasurable part for me was meeting our friend Benoit, because we spent at least a month with him, just partying with him. I went fishing with him, and like one time I went fishing with him, spearfishing, and I went with him and this other guy named Mamiya. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm so down to go. And because I just bought this new fishing spear, he brings me out and he brings me to like 50, 60 feet of water, and I'm like, and all the fish are at the bottom, and I'm like, I can't dive here. I could get to like 20 feet. But these guys would just go and sit at the bottom. They could hold their breath for 2-3 minutes, no problem. They would sit at the bottom, white reef sharks everywhere, and they just were nailing fish. And after me not catching anything for like an hour being with them, they're like, all right, how about we'll catch the fish and you could swim them back to the boat. And so that's what I did. And that was actually, that was a really fun experience, not even, that among others.
Did you have a low point? Or?
I'd say probably a low point was like the first night that I arrived, we were anchored, and it was in a relatively sheltered area, but it wasn't the best place. Probably 30, 35 knots of wind came through, and I was still getting used to being on the boat. So, you know, I'm trying to go to sleep, and I was feeling a little seasick, and I just had to tough it out, just like, it'll all be done in the morning, you know?
Yeah.
So,
and it did pass.
Yeah.
It was great to finally do an actual crossing of a significant length. I think that a lot of sailors are kind of reticent to actually leave shore and go and do that, and so I felt like it was important to get that out of the way and to see what it's all about. So that was a major high point and all. The whole thing, even though, you know, I might have been malnourished and tired and very ready to get to land in a lot of ways, there were beautiful moments like hanging off the back deck, coasting along at 2 or 3 knots just in the middle of the night, super glassy water, phosphorescence all around, and just waving my hand through the water and watching the eddies that it made, being able to see the bottom of the boat from the phosphorescence coming off it, lighting it up at night. That was just kind of amazing.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
There'd be a few moments when I thought, okay, it'll be nice when it's sunny and warm again. John and I on the crossing had 4 or 5 days that were just, you know, just pounding. Everything's wet and the boat's just pounding, and you're thinking, is this going to end? It's not like it was dangerous or scary, but you always had to be kind of listening. You're on edge, and it tires you out. And cooking's a chore, so it doesn't get done as often as it should. And I also just want to say, Rangiroa, hanging out with those guys, I mean, the people were amazing.
Incredible.
Absolutely, probably the best part of it all.
Sitting on the boom, laying back in the sail, like as the sun's going down, and you know the weather's cool, and you're just cruising along, and you're as comfortable as you've ever been. Or you know the meteor shower in the middle of the ocean that this guy apparently doesn't even remember. You know, seeing dolphins.
Because I was hanging off the back deck doing this in the water.
Yeah, seeing land. You know, first step on land, and knowing that you've basically crossed an ocean. Low points, being coughing up a lung, having to go up and reef a sail at 4 in the morning, while you're already cold and wet and tired and haven't eaten for like a day and a half because you just don't feel like it. What's the next step?
There's a lot of options on the table, but we'll just have to see what happens. Tahiti is the first, French Polynesia is the first step in a wonderful long chain of idyllic islands all the way across the South Pacific. So
from there to Australia, basically.
Like that's kind of the hard part that's done, and everything else is relatively close together. So it would be a big shame to not go back and take advantage of that.
I mean, it ends up being way more expensive, way more time-consuming, and way more life-absorbing than you would expect. And,
you have to be into tinkering with boats, and it's not going to be cheap and it's not going to be easy, but it will be a wonderful learning experience. But you have to be doing it for the love of it and not the reward that's perceived to be just around the bend, because it's probably a lot farther away than you might expect. The boat is never going to be ready. It's always going to be almost ready or a few more things to do, but you need to just forget about that stuff and figure out what's absolutely essential and just go. Because if you don't set a date and stick to it and just decide you're going to go no matter what, it's not going to happen. And most of the things on your list that you worry about, probably aren't even going to factor into it at the end of the day. They're not going to be big issues out there, and a whole other set of things is going to become what you worry about on a daily basis. And so just don't overthink it. Make sure you got your EPIRB and a few safety things and let the boat sound, and just set a date and go.
Great. Thank you all so much for coming. It was a really wonderful adventure hearing your story. So thank you.
Thanks so much for having us.
You're welcome. Thank you for watching tonight. Please make sure to see us on Pacifica Currents channel on YouTube.